Well, there's been trades, tenders, and a little everything in between for the Tampa Bay Rays.
The hot stove is sizzling for the Rays right now. Let's talk about it right now.
You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, my name is Kevin Weiss.
I'm Ulises Sambrano.
And we are the host of the Locked On Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your very first listen every day. Be sure to check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Locked On Rays. You can also find us on all the podcasting platforms. And we are accepting mailbag questions, lockedonrays@gmail.com to do that. Voice memos are preferred. We may have a mailbag episode or two forthcoming this week. In the meantime, the Rays have been staying busy as it is the offseason. It is the Hot Stove League, and notably paying attention to some deadlines here. The Rays have tendered 11 players eligible for arbitration, and they also made a notable trade. So a lot to dive into here.
A lot to dive into. I think first off, the anxiety that some fans had of like, oh, who's going to get tendered, who's not going to get tendered. Boom. Completely anticlimactic, you could say. Everybody got tendered a contract. It kind of speaks either to they like the group they have right now. Number two, they couldn't find trades for guys that they might have wanted to get offloaded from the 40-man. Wink, wink, Manuel Margot. Wink, wink, Harold Ramirez. So you tender them and you hope that you're able to kind of find dance partners throughout the offseason to kind of pair something up.
Yeah, I should note that that arbitration group, the 11 players that have been tendered between them, they would make approximately $38 million. And then tied in with that, the Rays already have 9 players signed for roughly $76 million, notably Tyler Glasnow, Manny Margot, and others. So as it presently stands, the current payroll would be an extreme record high of $120 million. The previous opening day high was about $78.25 million in 2022. So something tells me money is going to be moving, money is going to be shifting. And that's probably the notable question is which player or players or prospects, I know we'll get to the Vidal Bruján and Calvin Faucher trade, are next to go. Is Manny Margot that priority A, followed by Harold Ramirez, some have reported, Tyler Glasnow, others have reported. Like, what's the next shoe to drop to get that payroll narrowed a little bit? Because I just find it, if I'm ballparking it, I'm thinking the Rays have an opening day payroll of like $85 million max. That's what I'm looking at anyway. Like, okay, if I'm doing it over under $84.5 million, it's a tough question for me.
That's fair. Again, I've planted my feet on the fact that, hey, if I listened to Neander and he says we're willing to go for 120, I'm gonna take his word. Now, like you, I do feel like that number is extremely high as a Rays fan, especially with our history. But I would be a little bit more bullish on the payroll. Now, a lot of people might say, well, if you only unload Manny Margot and Harold Ramirez, that's not that much money. It's actually not, like, it's about 15 mil.
Yeah, that's a good chunk of change right there. So now you're down to $105 million for the opening day payroll.
Exactly. So if you look at it that way, is 105 something you could? Is it still high? 100% it's still high, but it would be a little bit more manageable than a 120. I think for Rays fans to wrap their head around. So I think, those are going to be the next two pieces. I know we have, for example, Mike on the YouTube channel. He is a staunch Harold supporter. He likes what he does. Who wouldn't like a guy who hits 300 for what, almost 500 at bats last season? Like, of course you're gonna like that guy. But the glove is really the issue here with Harold. I mean, you're kind of essentially burning the DH spot when you have a guy like Yandy Diaz who might need that DH spot. Not to this extent, but it's kind of like what Stanton does for the Yankees. Like, if you kind of need Aaron Judge to kind of, rest a little bit because of his humanity and his species the species that he is on the field. But you're burning the DH spot there with Stanton. It's kind of like the same thing with Harold. Like, you can't really put him in the corner outfield because you are threatening yourself into a defensive liability at first as well. So I think those two guys are the ones that should be moved next for the Rays.
Yeah. I would just hope that the Rays get some sort of decent enough value for Jose Ramirez. Whereas Manny Margot, I've almost come to terms with the idea that it would be a money dump. It would be a salary dump just to get the payroll off the books. And then from there, the Rays are going to have to find some additional outfield help because looking at the complexion of the 40-man roster, you're going to need at least one more catcher, and you're probably going to need at least one or multiple outfielders to just make things work and make things equal there going forward. Question, though, before we move along to the trade that was between the Rays and the Marlins, Eric Neander's Rays and Peter Bendix's Marlins. I've heard reports of the Yankees and the Mets being interested in Manny Margot. Would you be upset if Margot landed with the Yankees, or would it just not really matter all that much to you?
I would be more upset if Kevin Kiermaier plays for the Yankees.
I see.
I think there's a hierarchy. Yeah, it would bother me a little bit to see Manny in pinstripes. It really kind of, obviously it would, because I've liked Manny for so long. But it would bother me way more because KK is a historic Rays player. Say what you will about Kevin Kiermaier and all the flaws that you may think that he has. As a Rays fan, you cannot say that KK isn't in the historic books, in the historic players of this franchise. So that would hurt way more.
That's understandable. It's more so with that when it's a franchise cornerstone or multiple franchise cornerstones as opposed to a regular, an everyday or a little bit more than a part-time player. And Manny Margot certainly has had a lot of impact on the franchise. But like you said, Kevin Kiermaier, Tyler Glasnow, Charlie Morton, Yandy Diaz, Brandon Lau, something of that ilk in pinstripes would be heart-wrenching.
Gutted. Yeah, no, gutted completely. And, Glasnow might need, if that were to happen, which I don't think it would, he needs a haircut, and Manny Margot would need to shave his beard. And and KK also, the forever 5 o'clock shadow would need to be erased from his face. And I don't think KK wants that.
A lot of considerations there for sure. All right, we have more to discuss, but first we have to tell you this. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel. They are America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's 150 buckaroos if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right this very moment. The app is super easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn, LOCKEDON, to kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, they are the official partner of the NFL. And I'll say it one more time. Go visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn, LOCKEDON. All right, Ulises, in the midst of the 40-man exchanges and maneuvers, the Rays made a notable deal in unleashing Vidal Bruján and your favorite player of all time, Calvin Faucher, to the Miami Marlins, with the return being Andrew Lindsey, who was Miami's 5th-round pick in 2023, Erick Lara, a 17-year-old Dominican player, I believe, or international signing, and a player to be named later. I should note that Andrew Lindsey played SEC ball at the University of Tennessee and has a upper 90s fastball. And then Lara is, I think, a lefty bat, pretty raw, but seems to have some power on his side. But as I'd mentioned, not to play Nostradamus or pat myself on the back, I figured that with Peter Bendix going to Miami and that being the NL East versus the AL East, or the American League in general, that there would be some cohesion and some connection, some relationship that you could have. Hey, we need something, you need something, let's pick up the phone and make a deal relatively quickly. And that's what happened. And I guess Peter Bendix sees something or wants to give Vidal Bruján and Calvin Faucher a little bit of a longer leash, a new environment, a new organization, maybe a little less pressure, and sometimes just a little bit of change can spark a guy or two. So we'll see what they can do. But as we had been saying, I think for months and months now, that it's Vidal Bruján's probably not going to be on the roster for long term, and we finally saw it.
Yeah, and it was written, on the wall that this was probably going to happen. You were right. The camaraderie between Bendix and Neander has now started full throttle. First, he picks up Tristan Gray.
He's going. He's not messing around with some of these ex-Rays, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Miami Rays now. So
speaking of that, if you look at the Marlins 40-man roster, it is littered with former Rays players. I mean, a lot of rosters just because of the shuffling that the Rays do. But JT Chigual, Xavier Edwards, I would take him over Vidal Bruján at this very juncture. Jesus Sanchez, who is making a strong impact, and then Avi Garcia, who certainly tapered off over the last season or two. But several of those guys, Chigual, Edwards, Sanchez, are really doing important things for that organization and having success for that organization. And something tells me that more moves may be in the pipeline between the Rays and Marlins. And even going back a couple of years ago, I mean, it wasn't that long ago where the Rays made the Stanek, Nick Anderson deal. I mean, there's moves that have and will continue to be had. But as an aside there, I just want to note this about Vidal Bruján. Clearly the Rays, Eric Neander. I don't know what Peter Bendix has planned in store for him, but clearly they see that, he's not the answer after parts of 3 seasons with the Rays, 157 average, 10 extra base hits over 99 games. I mean, there was an opportunity there with the Franco off the field issue, Taylor Wall's injury. Like, you would think that, hey, let's pencil in Vidal Bruján, and they're like, nah, we're going to test the market and find someone else to fill that void for now anyway.
If you were, in tune to what was happening then, yes, it was supposed to be, quote unquote, supposed to be, because, things aren't supposed to be. They're earned. Vidal should have been the first go, but when they call up Ulises Basabe, that was basically them telling you, hey, he's no longer in our thoughts and or in our plans. You also saw this happening in 2018 when CJ Cron is hitting the heck out of the ball. He's having a 30 homer season for the Rays, and somehow, some way, Ji-Man Choi starts taking at bats from CJ Cron. Mm-hmm. And then that's when you were like, seems like Choi has won over CJ's position. And that's exactly what happened. So, I read a quote from Neander on Vidal. He says, not the way that we thought it would turn out once upon a time, but I think just a fresh start, a fresh opportunity for Brew, given his abilities and talent, should be a good thing for him. Wish him the best. I think that's exactly how 99.99% of the Rays fandom feels like. Hey, I hope good things for him, but how did it not work out? Like, we were expecting so much more from this guy. Longtime listener Austin Holloway reminded me the other day that there were packages in like 2020, 2021 with Vidal's name on it that would have been absurd to even that we said, no, we can't do that for Vidal. No way. So it's just another reminder for all of you well-intended, good-natured prospect huggers. Can't just think just because a prospect is killing it that you can't get away from them. You have to deal for pieces, and you might get burned sometimes. You might get burned, but more often than not, a major league talent that is doing things is more valuable than a prospect who hasn't shown that if they can do it in the major league level.
Well, if I recall, there was a point where the Rays considered him untradeable. We would not trade him. Wasn't there some sort of maneuver or deal that could have been in place? If you give up Vidal Bruján, we might give you back Craig Kimbrell and or Chris Bryant.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I really thought that Vidal Bruján was going to be something, especially after he showcased a little bit more power in the minors. But yeah, just a tough situation. He does have at least some verifiable skill set that an organization could use, the athleticism, the being a switch hitter, the defensive versatility. But, as is the case, oftentimes, the majority of the times, prospects usually don't pan out, and prospects that are overhyped usually don't live up to that hype. So it's often a case of over-promising and under-delivering.
I will say this, though. If I had green Skittles, I think he's going to do well in Miami. I think it's a way better environment for Vidal to, like, outside, like Miami itself for young Latino players. It's like if your head is centered, it's great. If your head's not centered, it might give you a lot of trouble. But he is a centered young man, and I feel like he's going to thrive in that environment. And the one thing that I think a lot of Rays fans don't put a lot of thought into it sometimes is that the Durham Shuffle is so difficult.
Oh, it's an impact for sure. I was about to mention that, just the up and down, up and down, up and down. And not only just all the travel considerations and the exhaustion and the uncertainty, but just how that makes you feel as a person, as a player, of like, does this, or do they really even care about me, or do they truly believe in me? And then you see other guys get, again, the Basabe call up, the Caminero call up. You're kind of left for dead. Left out to pasture in a way. It can certainly impact you.
Yeah, and all of the the bus travel and that of course takes a toll on you physically, and that's very important. But it's the mentals, man. It's the mentals of not knowing, what am I worth to this organization? Why am I being passed around? Why am I not getting called up? And then when you get the call up, when you have the opportunity to play, because sometimes you're just on the bench, like he was for a long time, like he was just depth. And then when you're on the field, you're like, I have to do everything right. That is not an optimal thing for a baseball player to be thinking on the field, or in any sport, really. It's like, I have to shine, because if not, my butt's getting cut, or I'm going to be seeing the bench for the next 10 games. So like, I need to do something. So that is not good for a baseball player to be thinking about when he's running the bases, when he's thinking, I have to showcase my speed, for example, in Vidal's case. And then you have a guy that stole 6 bags and then also gets caught stealing 6 times.
Yeah.
Trying to do too much. So I wish nothing but the best for Vidal. I hope he does triumph in Miami, and I think he will do way, way, way better than he did with the Rays, because he's got the playing time, hopefully, there in Miami.
He might have the playing time, and he does, I think, now actually will, in a way, feel wanted. Hey, there's an organization that went out and traded for me and Calvin Faucher, and again, maybe reuniting with some of his former farmhands and teammates, like seeing the impact that Xavier Edwards is having, and that Jesus Sanchez is having, and that, hey, sometimes the grass is greener outside of Tampa Bay, outside of St. Petersburg. So
Yeah.
wishing him the best. At the end of the day, is he going to be an all-star? Is he going to be a superstar? No, most likely not. But if he can carve out a role for himself where, he's a somewhat everyday player, or he gets, 250, 300, 350 at bats, then he can definitely carve out a role for himself. But, good luck to him, like you said. So we have the Bruján thing wrapped up. Now, Calvin Faucher, do you have any hope for him going forward, going to Miami, or is it more of a case of you're going to see those ERAs that look like credit scores in the future for him?
I mean, I again hope he triumphs and he does well. I think again he might have a little bit more opportunities with the Marlins than he did with the Rays, but yeah, everybody that's focuses on the analytics and the pitch shapes and all that, they really liked his stuff. It didn't translate to results, so hopefully it translates to results. But I'm also not expecting Calvin Faucher to have like a Kirby Yates character arc where he's just kind of like a middling reliever for the Rays, and then suddenly he pops off outside of the Rays organization, which is a very, very rare case for pitchers to do. I don't expect a Kirby Yates arc for Calvin Faucher. Hopefully he's a major leaguer arm for years to come, but yeah, I don't expect anything like huge from Calvin.
Yeah, speaking of pitchers, we'll see what Jalen Beeks does with the Rockies after signing a $1.675 million deal. And then Josh Fleming, I don't know what's going to happen with him because he was claimed off waivers, then non-tendered by the Phillies. So his situation's up in the air. And then one other nugget before we wrap up here, a lot of moves and happenings going on in baseball at the moment. Austin Meadows was non-tendered by the Tigers. Of course, he missed nearly all of this past season and parts of 2022 dealing with mental health issues. Any way in the world that the Rays consider bringing him back on a minor league deal, non-roster invite, something like that? Or hey, we don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
No, I think it's nothing. I don't think it would hurt the Rays at all. On the contrary, I think it would be a goodwill act towards the Meadows, to his family, to what he represented. I feel like just as a help would be great. And maybe he does feel comfortable with the Rays, and it never felt comfortable with Tigers. Maybe something was happening in his life and all of that, and hopefully he has put that behind him and is working through it. I don't see anything wrong with a minor league deal, an invitation to spring training. I think honestly that would be a really cool thing for the organization to do. I feel like every fan that cheered for Meadows would cheer for that to happen. Now, the reality of the world is, this is a business, right? So as a business, you might not want to do it, but I feel like in business school we all learn that about goodwill and how that can get you, people to like you and people to spend more money for your company if they see that you're doing good things. Yeah, that's an actual thing. So hopefully that were to if that were to happen, I'd be very happy about that.
Man, what could have been? And I think sometime before he got traded, that he had purchased a home in the Tampa Bay area. So he had, I guess, intentions on setting up roots there. And I honestly thought there was a moment where he would sign, or the Rays would offer him a long-term contract extension. He would be in a Rays uniform for quite some time. I mean, let's not forget he hit 33 jacks one year, 27 jacks another year. He was on his way or already establishing himself as a legit slugger in the
Funnily enough, coming back from Japan, next to me from the LA flight, there was a guy who was checking baseball scores. And I was like, "Oh, what team are you fans of?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm a Giants fan, but I've lived in Tampa for the last 20 years." I was like, "Oh, that sounds familiar." And he was saying he's a FedEx guy or a UPS guy. I don't know, remember?
Yeah.
And that he delivered to the Meadows' house.
Wow.
Constantly. and that when he would get there, Austin would always be in his garage in the weight room. And he was doing like really impressive stuff. He used to tell me so, or he told me then. So, you know, I look, he's going through stuff, but I think everybody in the Rays fandom would appreciate him coming back, or at least in like a minor league deal and with a spring invite. I think that would be good things for his mental health and psyche.
Yeah, and it's just really interesting because I think really the first time over the last couple of years that we've heard about these cases of professional athletes and baseball players dealing with this and not hiding it or keeping it secret. The stigma is a huge factor for sure. So hopefully he gets the help he needs, and hopefully he becomes a productive ball player again, or at least find some comfort and settle in his life going forward. In the meantime, that's kind of a wrap on the 40-man stuff. Yeah.
Last but not least, just quick thing. Lindsey, you were talking about Andrew Lindsey.
Yes.
Good stuff with the fastball. Apparently got strikeout stuff, 73 strikeouts and 71 and a third innings. He, I think, pitched at the University of Tennessee. 5th round pick. Like, I don't think that's nothing to scoff at. Like, that's actually a pretty good pickup, I think, for Vidal and Calvin.
I think he took a year off of baseball to coach youth baseball. So to come back and establish yourself as a 5th round draft pick and a high level SEC player, there's probably a little something to that. And he was one of now in the Rays organization, they already have him listed according to MLB.com as the 27th ranked prospect in the organization. They have an ETA for the righty at 2026 if and when he gets to the major. So
that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And that tells you about his makeup as a human being. You know, the fact that he went to coaching and then it came back, like, that tells you a lot. And the second player was infield prospect, we said, Erick Lara. Very, very young, very, very extremely young. So don't. I think this is more of a lottery, ticket here with Lara. If it pops off, great. But fun fact, he is from Bani, Dominican Republic, which is, of course, the same town as Jose Ramirez and Wander Franco.
There we go. Yeah, a lot of talent there for sure. Quite frankly, I'm probably a little bit surprised by the return for Vidal Bruján and Kevin Faucher. I mean, based on all that and the player to be named later, whoever that will be, I mean, I was just fully expecting that, you get a pack of gum for Vidal Bruján and another pack of gum for Kevin Faucher. So, and again, it helps with the 40-man alleviation as well there. So hit it up in the comments, what you think about that deal and who's going to be the next shoe to drop. Who's going to be that next trade? Is it Manny Margot? Is it Tyler Glasnow? Is it Harold Ramirez? Is it somebody else? We want to hear it for sure. Yeah. All right. In the meantime, hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and we will talk to you tomorrow.